Welcome to 10 Minute Magic, a bi-weekly format covering news in the world of Magic the Gathering in 10 minutes or less. Yes, I know, this is not actually our week. We did come out with an episode last week, and I know that you were just so happy to see us, but honestly, something too big to pass up on happened this week, and you're going to hear us talking about the new standard rotations. So, without further ado, I am Joseph Dunlap.
And I'm Joe Butcher, and this is what's been going on in this week in Magic the Gathering. Hall of Famer Shota Yasooka takes Pro Tour Kaladesh title. After a near-perfect run through the Swiss and top 8, Shota Yasooka has been named Pro Tour Kaladesh's champion. In a heavily aggressive standard metagame where many felt Control would have a difficult time, Shota's Grixis Control deck managed to fight his way through a field of aggressive and Control decks alike to clinch the second total seed going into the top 8. The top 8 provided yet another challenge, as no two decks were the same, making for an incredibly diverse field. After winning his semi-final match, Shota capped the tournament by defeating former world champion Carlos Ramao in an intense control mirror, Grixis vs Jeskai, with Fatcaster mages smashing into the red zone and counter spells flying across the table. Shota won the final match 3-1 with a total record of 8-1-1 in constructive and 5-1 in limited. Shota's deck list was not finalized until the last possible minute, at which point he put together his own control brew and went into the Pro Tour with limited testing. Shota's advice for players wanting to try out his Grixis control deck: don't try this at home.
New standard rotation. On the 19th of October, Wizards of the Coast made a huge announcement that will change the standard format. Standard rotations will be moved back to the once-yearly paradigm in place of its current 3-block method. This change came about from Standard becoming too difficult to enter for casual and new players. Wizards stated that they believe the current twice-yearly paradigm has resulted in a barrier to play that the once-yearly did not have, specifically having to remember when rotations would occur and which sets would rotate. As a result, the rotation will change back to its perceived healthier state. As Wizards states in the announcement, "We started hearing from players that it was more difficult to keep up. Players found it more difficult to jump back into Standard. The resulting confusion was the exact opposite of Wizards' goal for Standard as a gateway for beginning players."
Wizards of the Coast solution, in essence, is quite a simple one. They will change back to this once-yearly format, which is being put into place immediately as of Kaladesh and going forwards. Kaladesh will be legal for 2 years instead of the current 18 months, and will rotate out of Standard with the introduction of the second large set released in 2018. Aether Revolt will rotate out with Kaladesh and will get 18 months of play rather than a year. When Amonkhet releases in April 2017, all standard sets will continue to be playable. This means upon the release of Amonkhet, Standard will consist of the following blocks: Battle for Zendikar, Shadows over Innistrad, Kaladesh, and Amonkhet. When the September 2017 set releases, the Battle for Zendikar and Shadows over Innistrad blocks will rotate out of Standard at the same time. Due to this, Standard will noticeably fluctuate in size, with the range of available expansions changing from a sizable 8 to the 5 most recent sets. For more experienced players, this is simply a return to a well-known policy. For newer players, this is the easiest way to remember the new rotation schedule. At the end of September of each year, only the sets printed in the past year, starting with September of the previous year, will be legal in Standard. No other changes will occur until the following September. Whilst appearing rather sudden to most of us, Wizards of the Coast have recognised the potential perception that they will be toying around with Standard often, leaving players unsure as to what is going to happen next. Wizards, in response to this looming concern, have made clear that this will be a return to form for them and that they hold the players' feedback and experiences as a priority within the game.
We here at 10 Minute Magic tend to focus on facts and community reactions, foregoing giving our own personal opinions, except when we give a bit of commentary, which our listeners tend to enjoy. But at this point, I would like to offer up a sort of opinion piece on this topic, an editorial, if you will, reactions to the new, old, rotation schedule and what we should expect. Just as the quick, twice-yearly rotation schedule was a point of contention among Standard players while it was in effect, there is a bit of disagreement as to what will come of the return of the once-yearly schedule. The professor of Tolarian Community College, for example, launched the change and believes Standard has been slowly dying due to cards being Standard legal for less time. Frank Lepore at Channel Fireball pointed out two upsides: cards retaining value for longer, and players being less confused about the rotation schedule. Saffron Olive of MTG Goldfish pointed out some pros and cons of the change. The new schedule will be friendly to budget players, but will have unintended consequences on the mtgO redemption schedule. The general consensus among players is that cards will hold more value with a slower rotating schedule, though there is concern that oppressive decks will simply dominate the format for longer. The most popular example has been, what if Bant Company were in Standard for 6 more months? Though this is not a perfect example, as Collected Company, Dromoka's Command, and Jace Vryn's Prodigy would have rotated in September regardless of the rotation schedule. As part of the 3rd and 4th sets of the season, they would not have been affected by this change. For the sake of clarity on this point, only the first block of the season, the September and January sets, are affected by the new rotation schedule. This in part means that the second block of each season will forever live in the shadow of the first. It will be printed after the first block, and will rotate out at the same time. This was fine when the sets of a season consisted of 3 sets in the same block, followed by a core set. But part of Wizards of the Coast's reason for changing the rotation schedule was a shift to 2 blocks of 2 sets each year, and the elimination of the core sets. Now that Wizards has switched the schedule back to each September, the spring-summer block will never get its chance to shine outside the shadow of the autumn-winter block. For context, it's safe to say we all agree the best thing that was accomplished by the one and only mid-season rotation, which occurred at the release of Shadows over Innistrad, was the retirement of Fetch Lands and Siege Rattle from Standard. Siege Rattle had dominated the format for almost the entire duration of its 18-month stay, and Fetch Lands enabled 4-color strategies while skyrocketing the price of top-tier decks to near modern levels. The prominence of Siege Rattle kept Collected Company relatively under the radar for quite a while, and it only began to shine in early 2016 with 4-color Aristocrats. It was only after Siege Rattle rotated that Bant Company rose to the top of Standard, though Wizards gave it a nudge with some heavily pushed cards in the SOI block. What can we expect with the new schedule? First off, if Standard is to remain healthy, the autumn-winter block should start off the season by introducing new archetypes without being too overpowered. In the last few years, before the change away from the once-yearly rotation schedule, this became a problem with Innistrad, Return to Ravnica, Theros, and especially Khans of Tarkir, introducing oppressively dominating cards and strategies. A healthy Standard should start off the season by establishing new possibilities for archetypes, then expounding these archetypes as the season unfolds. The second block, if it must now live in the shadow of the first, should expand and morph the established archetypes while introducing a few of its own. Ideally, the most dominating cards of the format should be printed during the second block, such as Collected Company and Jace Vryn's Prodigy, as the winter and summer sets will only be in Standard for 15 to 18 months. No change there. This creates some problems, of course, with which sets will generate the most interest for Eternal players. The long-lasting implications of this paradigm shift and how it will affect the 2-block release structure remains to be seen. The hope is this will keep players more interested in the format, regardless of their budget, and that we will see a rise in Standard attendance after a noticeable fall-off in recent months. Engagement and enjoyment in the game we all love should be tantamount at all costs.
As we close out this short episode of 10 Minute Magic, we'll move on to Articles of the Week. Our only article this week comes from Jason Coles, titled, Let's Talk Bomat Courier. This article looks in depth at the frequently overlooked creature and its effect on the game in regards to card advantage, as well as providing a potential deck list for our hasty little friend. It was positively received across social media and on Reddit and generated a lot of discussion. Thank you very much for listening to our shorter podcast this week. If we missed anything you wanted to hear more about, dive deeper into, or want to let us know how much you enjoy the show, then leave us a comment on social media or find the text form of this episode on manaleak.com/mtgUK, and we will endeavour to respond to you all. You can find Joseph on Twitter
at Joseph_Dunlap
and myself at Darth_Mulligan. Or you can follow at 10 Minute Magic on Twitter and keep in touch with us there.
Since we did this episode a week early, you can watch for our next episode, which will occur in 2 weeks' time as I prepare for Grand Prix Dallas.
Until next time, bye-bye.